I got some bad news this morning. My wife and I sleep in different rooms. I snore a lot and have back problems, so it's better for us to sleep apart. Recently, I've been going to bed very late, around 4 a.m., because I don't have a job right now and I like the quiet at night. My wife usually wakes up between 5 and 6 a.m. because the cats bother her, and she gives them a snack before feeding them. Don't know why, but that's what she does. Anyhow, this morning when I woke up, she told me as she walked by my room, she saw a dark shape sitting on the edge of my bed, looking at me. She also mentioned she knew I was asleep because I was snoring. Usually, I watch something on my iPad before sleeping, but I keep my door shut so the iPad's sound doesn't bother her. If she saw me, it means the door was open because otherwise she couldn't have seen inside. That part doesn't worry me much. We have 4 cats, and it's normal for them to nudge the door open. What I'm absolutely sure about is that I had the door closed. I always make sure to put my iPad on sleep mode and charge my phone before going to bed. My door makes a creaking noise, so I would have heard it if it opened while I was still awake. This worries me because it's not the first time my wife has seen a shadowy figure. I've also seen one before I met her, back around 2008 or 2009, when I was living in my first apartment. I had the scariest moment ever. I woke up lying on my stomach, which I never do, and I realized I couldn't move my whole body. The only thing I could move was my eyes. I saw a shadowy figure coming closer from the corner of my left eye. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I started to feel really scared. I had the scariest moment ever. I woke up lying on my stomach, which I never do, and I realized I couldn't move my whole body. The only thing I could move was my eyes. I saw a shadowy figure coming closer from the corner of my left eye. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I started to feel really scared. I've noticed this weird tan dust that shows up out of nowhere in a small spot. It happened twice, but not in the same place. What's odd is that the areas around the dust just have regular dust. I looked up at the ceiling to see if anything was falling from there, but there was nothing. It's weird, because even though I'm not super obsessed with cleaning, the dust looks like it's been there for months. But that couldn't be true. Maybe it's not related at all, but I wanted to talk about it. I've seen documentaries about sleep paralysis and read some medical articles. I'm not sure if it's a medical thing or not, but what surprises me is that people from everywhere, with different beliefs, have had the same experience. They can't move their bodies, and they see one or more shadowy figures. When I was in 3rd grade, I always ended up getting home late. My dad worked as a lawyer, and his cases often ran long into the afternoon, or they were held in distant places. So even though school would finish around 3 p.m., I had to wait for him to pick me up so we wouldn't get home until between 6 and 8 p.m. I didn't mind waiting for my dad. I was just a kid. I played with my friends until they had to go home. Then I did my homework and read my books. After they left, I'd wait for my dad. It was pretty good, actually. In the evening, all I had to do was go home, eat, watch TV, and then sleep. Thinking about it now, I really liked having this simple routine. I remember there was this super fun game in the Philippines called Beyblade. I was really excited because my mom had just bought it for me yesterday. It was the first time I could bring it to school to play with. After school ended, we all went to the library to return and borrow books. Then, I raced my friends Denz and Gab to the front balcony of our building. The balcony was at the end of a short hallway. There were boys' and girls' bathrooms on either side. When we got there, we decided to close the bathroom doors so we could lean on them and play the game comfortably. Gabby and I agreed, and we checked inside the girls' bathroom to make sure nobody was there, so that we wouldn't accidentally lock someone in like we almost did last time. Denz checked the boys' bathroom while Gab and I checked the girls'. Once we made sure it was empty, Gab and I closed the doors and locked them with the padlocks. Then, we started playing our game. I sat on the floor with my back facing the hallway. Gab sat in front of the girls' bathroom, facing me. Denz was leaning against the boys' bathroom door. We had been playing for an hour, and I was really enjoying it. Suddenly, Gab felt a bump on her back. She stopped leaning back and rubbed her back. Then, we heard a loud thud, like someone had kicked the door. The single kick turned into many kicks, and we heard crying. A woman was crying from inside the bathroom. We all got up and tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. The woman's cries got louder and louder, switching between crying and sobbing. I told Gab that I was sure nobody was in there when we checked before. The three of us started to panic as we tried to unlock the padlock on the bathroom door. We only managed to dent it, realizing it was no use. We were just 8 years old, too weak to break the lock. So we went downstairs and found the nearest maintenance worker or guard. We told them what happened. They went to get the female guard janitor, and we kept apologizing, saying we didn't know anyone was inside. We were sure we checked the whole bathroom before closing it. Gab and I were almost crying, and Denz looked really scared. We knew we were going to be in big trouble. They asked us where the bathroom was, and followed us there. As they heard the crying, they started walking faster. The crying sounded so loud, like it was right in front of us, even though it was actually far away. It was really loud, and the idea that we might be responsible for this woman's sadness and the trouble we might get into made us feel like just lying down and crying. But we didn't stop. We went up the stairs and walked down the hallway until we reached the door. The crying was even louder now. The janitors unlocked the door quickly. Just as the female guard rushed inside, leaving us outside, the crying stopped. Instead of feeling relieved, we were met with a creepy silence. Confused, the two adults searched every stall and behind each door, but they didn't find anyone. Looking back, I think their sudden change in attitude scared them, which made us even more frightened. The janitors closed the door slowly and helped us grab our bags, with our books inside. They led us downstairs to the main office where our ID cards were kept. They gave us water and snacks to help us calm down because we couldn't stop crying. The head guard wouldn't have believed our story if he hadn't seen how upset the two adult guards were, along with 3 crying kids trying to explain what happened. He listened to us, and the guards and janitors wrote a note on their small whiteboard to search the 2 bathrooms carefully throughout the night. After that scary experience, we were too scared to play anywhere else but in front of the guard's office, until we went home for the next few years. I still got home late because I never told my parents what happened, and it seems like the school never told them either, but Gab and I never went near that bathroom again. I've looked after many elderly folks as they neared the end of their lives, but there's one special story about a sweet lady we'll call V. She was frail and in the early stages of dying. When we tried to lift her nightgown to ensure she was comfortable, she resisted fiercely, clinging to it tightly and gazing off into the distance, lost in her own thoughts. She usually let us help her with her clothes, and she wasn't shy. We waited a bit and tried again, but she kept looking up and pushing our hands away. She couldn't hear us, so talking to her didn't work. Finally, on our 3rd try, we gently moved her hand, and then she whispered, "Not in front of me." After that, we left her alone for a bit, and she died that night. Now, here's another story that you might find creepy. Last night, around 4 a.m., I was walking in the woods on duty. I looked behind a building and thought I saw something move. So, I went to take a look. I drove my patrol car around the corner and saw something moving. I went over there and checked the side of the building, where someone might have gone if they moved around the corner. The building was really long, so even if someone ran as fast as they could, I don't think I would have missed them. And there was nowhere for them to hide, but I didn't see anyone. I thought whoever I saw moving around the corners didn't want to be seen, so I decided to report it as suspicious activity. As I turned away from the driver's side window to grab my radio, I noticed movement out of the corner of my eye through the passenger window. So I turned my head, but I missed seeing it. I made my call, took my flashlight, and got out of the car. I walked around to the right side of my patrol car and looked around carefully, but I still couldn't see anything, even though I knew I saw something move. Then suddenly, I felt someone tap my shoulders from behind. I was so scared I nearly jumped out of my skin. I quickly turned around and shone my flashlight, only to realize it was just a purple helium party balloon. It was one of those shiny balloons with a yellow star on it. I had a little laugh and waved the balloon away before going back to patrolling. About 5 miles down the road, and 5 minutes later, I looked over at a building and saw something moving around a corner. I stopped just in time to see the same balloon float out from around the corner, then drift back behind the buildings. When I was 8 years old, me and my grandpa were in El Salvador. One Saturday night, we were coming back from visiting family who lived up in the mountains. It takes about an hour and a half or 2 hours to hike there. It's a nice place to hike during the day, but at night, it's different. We leave my uncle's place later than we planned, around 8 p.m., but we weren't too worried because we've done this hike many times, although never after 10 p.m. Locals say it's not safe to be out there after 10 p.m. because they've seen and heard some disturbing things. We didn't believe in those things, so we ignored them. But after what happened, we can't be so sure. We had our own flashlight. Grandpa had a big flashlight as bright as a car headlight, and we had water bottles and snacks in our backpack. There was no moonlight, so it was too dark, just trees all around and a few houses here and there. We heard strange noises and other weird things, but because we were in the middle of the mountains, we ignored it and kept walking. About a mile from home, things got very strange. We couldn't hear any sounds, not even crickets chirping. Everything went quiet. That's when my grandfather took my hand and told me to stay close. I felt scared and anxious. I checked my watch, and it was 9:15 p.m. I told my grandpa, and he said not to worry, we were almost home. I kept shining my flashlight ahead so I wouldn't step on anything or trip. Then we saw this big tree about 20 feet away from us. It had a bow tied to it, which I thought was weird, and so did my grandfather. He said, that's interesting, a bow on a tree. Then, to our surprise, we saw a woman. She was wearing a gray or light blue dress, I'm not sure which. She was standing on the other side of the tree with her back to us. I asked my grandpa, why would she be out here alone at this time? He said, maybe she's lost or hurt. So, we rushed over to see if she needed help. We got about 10 feet away from her. When she started walking, Grandpa shouted, "Excuse me, miss, are you okay? Are you lost?" But there was no answer, not a single word. She just kept walking. After you pass the tree with the bow, about 5 to 10 feet, you go down the hill into an open space with a few trees. There are some nice flowers there and a walking trail next to it. Grandpa stood at the bottom of the hill in front of the trail and said, "Come on, honey, we gotta hurry. I don't think she's okay." When we turned back, she was gone. We searched everywhere but couldn't find her. She couldn't have run away that quickly, and the trail was long with only a few trees around. There was nowhere for her to hide, even if she tried. Because Grandpa had a big flashlight, we could see the landscape well. We looked all around us, but we didn't see anything. We kept walking and searching, hoping to find her, but we had no luck. When we reached the town, I checked my watch, and it was 10:15 p.m. I told Grandpa how relieved I was that we made it safely and just in time to leave the mountains. He was still worried about what happened to that lady. The next day, Grandpa told someone about our experience with the strange woman. The person interrupted my grandfather and asked, "Are you talking about the big tree just before you go down the hill?" Grandpa said yes and asked why. Our neighbor called his wife Susan over and started telling us about a murder that had happened in that area. On Thursday that week, a woman was walking home around 8 p.m. when she met a man who tried to steal from her. She fought back, so he stabbed her 4 times, and she died from bleeding. They found her at the bottom of the hill the next morning. The next day, they caught the killer. He was drunk, with a bloody shirt and hands, and had a knife in his pocket. People thought he was injured, but when they heard about the murder, they reported him, and he confessed. My grandfather turned pale, and I didn't know what to say, but we felt really sorry for her. Our neighbor's wife, Susan, said that we weren't the only ones who had seen her. Some locals had also seen her walking from the tree to the bottom of the hill, where her spirit seemed to go back and forth.